Good morning, my name is TJ Morris Bear of bearindependent.com, and this morning, before I get started feeding my sheep and burning brush for the day out here on the land, I wanted to talk to you all about this Trump impeachment shenaniganry and what I don't think most people are talking about. Now, I could be wrong. I'm a human being. I've been wrong before. I watched the Glenn Beck The Blaze special Hydra recently that looked a lot, their logo looked a lot like my buddy Squid's logo. So I think somebody owes somebody some royalties. Just saying. But Glenn made the case in that video that the United States State Department for the last 80 to 100 years-ish has basically been enacting foreign policy outside of the presidency. Yeah, no stuff, bro. And that these career diplomats are outside of political authority. And he started that by saying, there's a whole probably 5-minute intro about the importance of your vote and what he has long held as the importance of our vote as Americans to go and do our civic duty. Shut up and be meat. I'll get to you in a minute. I like to encourage them to go do our civic duty and vote. I have been of the opinion for a long time that it doesn't matter. And we can have the conversation as to whether or not Donald J. Trump was the intended benefactor of the 2016 elections or not. And that's a different video for a different time. But the system is broken. I don't believe that playing within that broken system makes much sense anymore, as I've talked about before. Now, in this Hydra video from The Blaze, they talked quite a bit about what the State Department has been doing in the Middle East and North Africa over the last however many years, the last few administrations. One of the things that I find very interesting, and believe me, the State Department is basically a repository for spies. And yeah, they don't work for the president, they work for themselves. And who ran the State Department under Obama? Yeah, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Just checking, there could be a guy putting a beat on me right now for simply saying those 3 words. However, I think that a big part of this State Department, Soros, Civil Society 2.0 effort is to create these spontaneous uprisings in regions that will become grow zones in the coming climate change. Now, I'm not a proponent of what is traditionally touted as climate change. I think that global warming is a bunch of bull honky. I don't necessarily believe in man-made climate change, other than to say that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And of course, people living on the earth is going to have some ramifications for the earth, but I think that the ramifications that we've had are so minuscule as to not matter. I also think that I don't believe in Gaia and a sentient earth, but I do believe that systems adapt. So if we put more CO2 into the atmosphere, more trees grow, they scrub the CO2 and produce more oxygen, win-win for everybody. But I digress. But I do believe in solar cycles, and I believe that Adapt 2030, David Dubine and Christian at the Ice Age Farmer have been talking quite a bit about this for a good long while, and David at Adapt 2030 has hit many times that these historical grow regions are areas that are coming back online because of solar cycles. And I do believe that we're always in a solar cycle. That's a fact. How much you believe that solar cycle affects our daily lives is entirely up to you, and will of course be proven out historically over time. But I think it's interesting that these Fabian socialists who have a very long-term plan, they are strategic, not necessarily tactical, they're strategic, who are doing work with and for and by Soros are fomenting uprising in areas that are traditional grow regions based upon this 400-ish year solar cycle, and then the 2400 year and the blah, 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 blah. And, oh look, the goats are out. And as stated, these regions, as they come back online, Soros said there's only so much money that one can have. The game that we're playing now is power. Food is power. I've said this 100,000 times. Food is power. You control the food, you control the people. And so I find it interesting that your tax dollars were sent through the State Department to non-governmental organizations that had direct oversight from the State Department to enact things on behalf of the State Department, which was doing precisely what it was encouraged to do by George Soros, to foment revolution, to overthrow existing authority in areas that will become grow regions in the next few years. How interesting. Now, I also believe that those same groups that have been encouraged elsewhere in other countries, these radical progressives that were encouraged by Soros, are also being encouraged here. What does any of this have to do with Trump's impeachment? Ukraine. Ukraine is what we're talking about now, but it's just one of several nation states where all of this dirty, underhanded State Department bull honky has been going on. It's been going on in dozens of other countries as well, as if we should be surprised. I mean, the history of conflict over the last 100 years in the United States can be directly tied back to State Department involvement. Everybody knows the ambassadors don't necessarily work for the State Department. They're just high-level spies. They're intelligence operatives. That's what they do. By and large, give me that. Yeah, with all the caveats and the blah, blah, blahs. But allow me some latitude here to make the point. Over the last 100 years or so, you can tie State Department involvement directly back to United States military conflict and global conflict. Are we surprised now that the State Department has been tied to United States military conflict and global conflict? And I believe Trump has the goods on these people and is trying to the best of his ability, burn them at the stake and expose them for what they are. Which is why they are fighting tooth and nail to impeach him now. Because think about it, if they really had anything on him, they would just defeat him in the 2020 election. I don't know if that's possible for them to do, and if they do, you might have a populist uprising here. If he wins, you might have a populist uprising here. But the tie-in for me that I found very interesting was the fomenting social revolution, which then turns into armed conflict in nation states around the world that will become grow regions. That are not now, but will become again grow regions in the near future as the solar cycle shifts. I haven't heard anybody else talk about the entirety of that all kind of put together. Again, David Dubine, Adapt 2030, and Christian at Ice Age Farmer are two of the people that I listen to regarding that, and they do talk about grow regions coming online. They do talk about societal conflict. They do touch on the politics of these issues, but I haven't heard it couched in the terms of why the Trump impeachment matters in the light of food production. And what do they all have to do with each other? Power is what they have to do with each other. War is a game of resources. Allocating certain resources to protect or acquire other resources. That's what it is. War is a game of resources. And we have all known that we have been engaged in quiet war with a dozen or more different countries forever and a day. Because it's a game of resources. And so when diplomacy fails, these come out. When we can no longer talk about our problems, we will all give each other acute cases of high-speed lead poisoning until somebody wins and controls said resources. So I'm interested in your comments as long as they're profitable for the conversation and relative to the conversation. Put them down below, and I'd love to see what you guys think about this. I don't know. The implications of that, Grow your own food. Hey, look, there's some of my food over there, being food, because food is wonderful. Because food is power. George Soros knows this. The Luciferian Clinton State Department knows this. If these are our enemies, shouldn't we at least acknowledge that food is power and then act like it? Have a blessed day, YouTube. Shalom.